We're recording the interview of Angela Swartz. This interview is being conducted by Eric Whitty and Adrian Hill from the Wright State University Veterans Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at VFW 5434 in Union, Ohio. It's 5 o'clock p.m. on August 24th, 2014. Okay, so let's start off at the beginning. Where and when were you born?
Troy, Ohio, Stoddard Memorial Hospital, November 19th, 1971.
Okay. And who were your parents and what were their occupations?
My parents, who are both still living, Philip Lee Woods and Bobby Ann Gladman Woods. My father actually works for Miami County. I work for Montgomery County. And my mom works for a CPA in Piqua, Ohio.
Okay. Any siblings?
Yes, I have one sister and one brother. Amy Beth Woods, now Target, and Britt Allen Woods.
Okay. Were any of your parents or your siblings in the military?
My brother was in the Air Force, actually after I was out of the Navy. He's younger than I am. I'm the oldest of three.
So you were the first one in your family to serve?
My father did not. My grandfather was in the Korean War.
Okay.
He served during the Korean War.
Okay. So what were you doing before you entered the service?
Drifting. Didn't really want to go to college like everyone else. Just kind of, so I was going to take a year off or so, figure out what I wanted to do. And then ended up talking to a Navy recruiter, talked to an Army recruiter, Air Force recruiter, and decided to go to the Navy so that way I could see the world.
Okay. Just answered 3 of the questions. Okay, so what year did you enlist?
1992.
1992. And how old were you?
I was 20.
Okay. So, how long after you enlisted was it before you went to basic training?
Let's see, I enlisted that summer and went in that August, so it was in a matter of, I think, maybe 2-3 months I was gone, so that was okay with me.
Where did you go?
I did my boot camp in Orlando, Florida.
Okay.
They actually do not have that boot camp anymore. They closed that base, and now it is, from my understanding, nuke. They train, they have nuclear schools there, I think, nuke schools.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but
What was the name of the base?
it was the boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
It was Orlando, Florida. They had that back then in '92. They had Orlando, they had San Diego, and then Great Lakes.
They just called it Orlando base, though, or?
Training facility. It was
NRD.
I'm not
Orlando,
sure. I think it's kind of been a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
When they're screaming at you, get off the bus. You're really not checking
Yeah.
out where you're at. But
So how was that? How was your first experience in?
boot camp was rough. I think the hardest part was I smoked up until that time, until I went in, and they had to hand over all your cigarettes and your lighters and all your tobacco paraphernalia, and if you got caught, you got set back. So that was probably the roughest. Could not smoke. So.
And is Navy boot camp, is that co-ed or do they have you separate?
Well, I was actually in an I division, which was integrated, and we had male and female in the same compartments. We did everything together as far as training, classroom. The only thing was separate was at night. We obviously didn't bunk together. We would trade barracks, one floor. Both of them would be integrated companies, and we would swap. One time the females would switch over, and then the next night the males would switch over. So, but we did not bunk together. No.
Do you know why they swapped the areas?
Well, probably for fraternization. Why we swapped areas and didn't sleep in the same compartments together. They probably didn't want a bunch of girls pregnant during boot camp.
Well, yeah. No, but why didn't you just stay in the same one the whole time? I'm curious.
Because they had to separate male from. We were in an integrated company. We ate chow together. We did class together. We did marching. We did all of the physical activities together. We did not shower together, and we did not sleep in the evenings, the same compartment. They separated us, so that's why they switched.
Okay. What did your family think when you left for boot camp?
I don't think they were proud of me, but weren't quite understanding why I chose to go into the military. But I think for me, I was not headed in the right path, and it was a good thing, saving grace for myself. So that's why I chose. I think a lot of people try maybe for schooling, but I needed to get on the right foot.
So no one tried to talk you out of it or change your mind?
No, not really, and I don't really think I would have listened anyway. I think I pretty much had my mind made up. So.
Okay.
Hold on one second. Were your parents, you said they weren't really, they weren't like supporting it, but they weren't really against it, or did they grow up like during Vietnam then?
My dad was,
Is that part
he
of it?
missed that.
Okay.
Vietnam, he missed the cutoff. He was born in, let's see, 52, 53. So he missed, as far as with Vietnam, he wasn't, I think he didn't get the draft card or anything. No, I think that, I think they were supportive as far as that I needed to do something with my life and kind of quit, bouncing from here to there. But I think that they were a little surprised I chose the military versus going to college. So
they would rather seen you do that?
I think that they, once I got in, I think a little bit more of it was, can she really do this kind of thing. So they were supportive.
Okay.
Okay. So in boot camp, do you remember your instructors?
Yes, we had a female and a male. And Jarvis was the male company commander, and the female, we were actually her first company that she had as a company commander, so she was hard. I'm trying to think of what her name was. She was something though. She was a screamer. I mean, she was one that would get up in your face and scream. But I think, the thing about boot camp though, they break you down, but then they build you back up. So, I mean, it's, and I think I possibly had a little bit more of an advantage because I was not right out of high school. I had a little bit more people skills maybe, and if that makes sense as far as, so I knew that it was these were kind of mind games, so it wasn't necessarily, I knew that, 6 more, just kept counting down the weeks. Just keep your nose to the grindstone, 5 more weeks, 4 more weeks, 3 more weeks.
So you think you were maybe more mentally prepared being 20 instead of 18?
I think so. I mean, not saying that it wasn't a little bit physically challenging. It was mentally challenging as well. But I remember there were a lot of females that they were crying and just missed home or had been out on my own for a couple of years, and I had that kind of under my belt. I had been away from home and so forth, so that was a little bit easier.
Okay. So what kind of training did you get in boot camp?
In boot camp, I went in as an undesignated fireman. When they get to MEPS, they promise you the world, so you'll sign the papers. I wanted to do telecommunications, which was IC, which later I found out the rate was completely saturated and it was about impossible to get into. When I went into boot camp, we did basic training. I did not go in as, like I said, undesignated fireman, so I didn't have a school after. after I left boot camp, I did, we went to the firefighter training school, where you go through classes and so forth before they send you to the ship. And then I went to San Diego and did my overseas firefighter training and shipboard training, where they actually put you in a simulator where the ship is flooding and you have to shore, stop the water from coming in. Hard charger, you're the first one up the ladder and they're pushing you through the water. The overhead is flooding. And then firefighter training, where it's simulated you're actually on a ship and you're actually fighting the fire, this close to the flames with all the apparatus gear on. So.
Wow, what's that training like?
Pretty intense. It was pretty intense. So, but I loved San Diego, and that's when I decided that I don't necessarily think I want to be sitting in the bottom of the ship in 3 feet of bilge water up to my ankles. So I know I studied harder when I was in California to meet my qualifications and get those signed off before I went to the ship. That way I could get out of being in the undesignated fireman. Mm-hmm. I had the opportunity to work at PSD, which is where we do all the paperwork for all military people, whether you're incoming, your pay, everything's tracked, and they keep everything, all of your medical, everything that's in your personnel record. That's what PSD does.
Okay.
So I had the opportunity to work there when I was in between classes in California and San Diego, and so I got a bunch of my qualifications signed off, and which paid off when I went to the ship, because they still had to put me in a repair billet, but I worked in an office. So instead of going to Tijuana every other night, I hit the books.
Well, before we move on, the firefighting, did you wear like full firefighter equipment in the ship?
Did I? No, not on the ship. I did not. I was not actually. Wasn't a firefighter on the ship. But everybody has to be trained in this, because you're basically a floating city in the middle of the ocean. And when you're standing different watches, you have red shirts are firefighters, and they're the ones who have the apparatus gear, the ones who are putting out the fire. And then the green shirts, they're the DC. Damage control. So when I stood watch, I was a DC. I wore a green shirt, and you had to do your duties, check fan rooms, make sure there was no flooding, check different compartments. You had a check-off list, and then you reported to the officer of the deck every hour on the hour that you did your rounds. So.
Okay. So, so after the school in San Diego, you got assigned to a ship?
Yes.
Which one?
USS Holland, AS-32. It's a submarine tender. It's actually just been decommissioned this past year, so it's in mothballs, a scrapyard. It was an integrated ship, which they came over from Charleston, and by the time when I got my orders, it said Charleston, but everyone said, no, you're going to Guam. I said, okay, well, I guess that's better than Cuba. So I flew from LAX, from San Diego to LAX, and then from LAX we met the ship in Japan. So I flew from LAX with a group that we're all going to the ship, check on, and it was, the ship was in, I think... Sasebo, yes, it was in Sasebo. We flew into Fukuoka and then took a bus from Fukuoka. No, we flew into Fukuoka and then I think we flew then to maybe Osaka, and then Osaka we took a bus to Sasebo. Have you been to Sasebo? Yeah. Yeah. Different.
So I'm curious, you said the Holland was decommissioned. Do you know when it was commissioned?
I think originally it was commissioned in, I don't know for sure, but I know it was in Scotland. I think that was the first place that it was, first duty station. I remember reading that. I want to say it was maybe in the 50s. I don't know. I should have done my homework
So it was already a pretty old ship by the time
Yes.
you were on it.
Yes. Every time, it seemed like every time we'd go out for drills, we would be dead in the water for a little while. Yes.
Do you have condenser problems and?
Yes, we would be on a water restriction. That's where I learned the baby wipes come in handy, and baby powder. We would.
Could you explain the condenser for the record?
Well, they have to ration water. I mean, it was paper plates, plastic, silverware. When those condensers go down, they have to keep the water for. We could bring water in for anything as far as fire, but they have to keep the engines and so forth cool. So showers, washing dishes, washing laundry, that just wasn't of importance. So, but you get through it. So.
Did the water taste different when it was low?
I drank a lot of bottled water. I would keep it stashed in my rack, and so when we got low on that, I kind of made sure that we went underway, that I had bottles of water stashed just in case, because it does taste. And with even them bringing the salt water on board, for anything that happened, anything fires or anything like that, that's what they're using, is pumping in water from the ocean. If you spend any time at the ocean with the salt water and so forth, it kind of gets grimy on your skin.
So how long were you on the Holland?
I checked on board, let's see, it was, I believe, February of '93 is when I met the ship, and I was off the ship in '94. And I believe I processed out in December of '94, but I was off the ship and put over on Naval Station Guam, I think 3 months prior to that, because that's when all of the ear problem started, and I couldn't be on the ship anymore. It started when I was on the bridge, sound-powered phones. I was having a hard time hearing, and by the time they figured out what was going on, pretty much all my hearing was gone in my left ear. So it was kind of one of those things, well, it's an ear infection and medical. By the time they sent me actually to the Naval Hospital there in Guam, that's pretty much all the hearing was gone. So,
Yeah, so we definitely want to get into that in some more detail, but before we leave the ship, it was a submarine tender.
yes.
So did you guys tend to submarines?
What a subtender does, we have subtenders are equipped with hull techs, which are welders, machinist mates. So when a sub is, most of them on Westpac come up 6 months, any repairs they need done. The Holland had capabilities of 5 subs, two on each side and then 1 aft. So starboard port and then 1 aft. Supplies, we put any supplies they needed, any type of update on medical records. You could tell though when the guys would walk, guys from the subs would come up and walk past you because they had a unique smell to them.
Yes.
Yes, the sub guys were. I did go down on a sub just to walk to sea, and I'm not claustrophobic, but I don't know that I could spend 6 months down in something like that. That was interesting. So.
Was that before they allowed women in the submarine service?
That was before they allowed women on the subs. Yes.
So I'm curious, did you guys have to have special security clearance working with the submarines?
Yes, well, with the hull techs, and yes, we did. Now, as a PN, if they were docked, I mean, we just couldn't walk on without having an escort or so forth. But, people who had never been on a sub, they were pretty lenient. And in talking with people that were stationed on the West Coast versus the East Coast, I was pretty lucky in being stationed on Guam because it was kind of laid back. So it wasn't as, I would say, strict as what Norfolk was. A lot of people that I knew coming back that were stationed in Norfolk, that was it was a lot stricter, So, but.
So what was a typical operation like for you guys? You said you were based out of Guam.
Yes.
How much time would you spend on the land before you went back out to sea? What was it like?
I would say we were probably shore 2-3 months, and then we'd go out. We didn't sea trial. Well, now that doesn't count sea trials and so forth because we still had drills to do. But let's see. I'm trying to think. I met the ship in Japan, in Sasebo, and from February when I got on the ship until I was off the ship in probably, I think, maybe October of '94. We went to Korea.
Full legal?
Chinhae.
Okay.
We're at Chinhae. We went back to Sasebo a couple times. That's when we got to break out the blues. It was cold. It snowed. Actually got to see snow. Hong Kong, before the Chinese took it back. We were stationed. That was let's see, Singapore. Went to Singapore, and I think that's all of the. So within that time frame, from February of, well, we were in Japan. So February of '93 until August of '94, we went all those places. So give or take. There's a couple evacuations because of typhoons. They have typhoons over there in Guam, so we had to evacuate. I was on shore duty for one of those. I think we only had 2 the whole time, so I only had to get underway once, and then the other one I was on stay behind on shore. So interesting to see palm trees bend over like that, touch the ground. So, but. We still had a lot of subs though that came to Guam though as well, where we would they would dock beside us while we were still in Homeport.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it wasn't necessarily we were going to different places, but every time we went to one of those ports though, we were working on subs. Also surface ships as well. We repaired other surface ships.
Yeah, makes sense. So what exactly was your duty on the ship?
When I got there, I went as an undesignated fireman because of the qualifications and getting signed off for P. And I told them when I got there I wanted to strike PN, to cross deck over to seaman and strike PN. I was still put in repair billet, but it was in repair 2. And I was probably there maybe not quite 2 months, and then I was put in mess crank. Your 120 days you do mess crank, you work in the kitchen, which I did on nights the whole entire time, which we just packed, if we were still in Guam, we just packed a bag and left the ship so we didn't have to mess with all the drills and so forth, and just slept in a cabana. I really did have a good duty. I really did, as far as being stationed on Guam. Once I got back from mess cranking, I went back to the repair billet and worked in the R's, inputting information into logistics system. And I actually went to school when I got it was I think it was Korea. They sent me to a logistics school for supply. And after that, I struck seaman so I could strike PN. personnelman, and I was put into the personnel office and given part of the alphabet, people coming in, new enlistment, new people checking on board the ship. You had your ID card. If you lost it, issue new ID cards. Anybody getting married, any changes. I also was selected to go to the Guam hospital and put in information for dependents when the ship was underway. That way they, anybody who got married or had any children, newborns or so forth, put it in. It's called the DEERS system, DEERS. And so I got to go over there a couple times a week. So I learned a lot of computer training, what was, Word Perfect back then, but it was kind of a turn where they were actually doing more computer instead of hand, actually everything being handwritten. So trying to get up to speed.
And they still have the DEER system now? They still use the same one?
I'm not sure if they do or not.
No, they do.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, still.
Oh, they do? Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
It's probably been upgraded.
Yeah,
I would say back from
They kept the name.
1993, yeah.
They kept the name.
Okay. So let's talk about your injury. What exactly happened?
I was having some problems hearing. I just kind of blew it off. I thought, well, same thing. A lot of swimming. I mean, we're there in a tropical island. Boonie stomping, going different places in the jungle. They have a freshwater pond there. But it started to get noticeable when I was having problems hearing on the bridge, sound power phone, taking direction, because on a sound power phone, it's all, it's not electrical. It's a box, a junction box you plug into, and you're hearing on both sides. So you're taking commands from whoever's officer in charge, and then you're relaying this by pushing this button. So as something wasn't right, I went to medical on the ship. You have an ear infection. They gave me some drops, so forth. Wasn't getting any better, progressively getting worse. I went back again. They finally sent me for a hearing test. Significant loss of hearing. A little bit of a debate whether they were trying to say that it was because I was scuba diving, which I was not certified. There's nothing wrong with my eardrum. It's some type of nerve damage. But I didn't fall, wasn't hit in the head that I remember. But anyway, no. But I could have finished out my enlistment, but I would have been in a transient personnel unit, cleaning toilets, not working in my rate. So I chose to get out. Hindsight, maybe I should have stayed in and finished out my 4 years, but I didn't think that. I wasn't sure, and when you're not sure where you're going to end up at, I knew if I got out I was coming back here to home. But they would have sent me to Treasure Island. Who knows where I don't know where I would have ended up at, so I just decided to go ahead and get out.
Did they ever figure out what caused it?
No. And I've been to the I go out to the VA, have been since I've been out. They've done more hearing tests. There's nothing, everything's intact in my ear. So there's not, I haven't really explored as far as, they've come a long way with different things now with surgeries and so forth, but kind of like I don't really want to mess with it too much. What if something, try something, it doesn't work well, and then I can't hear at all, or I'd rather just let it go. And over the years, I've learned to read lips, so it's not that bad. So.
Well, I kind of want to skip ahead a little bit. When you enrolled in the VA system, what was that process like, getting your hearing loss service connected?
When I first got out, I went to the VA, took all my paperwork and everything. You know, I was skeptical about, because some people, you hear horror stories about the VA. I have never, ever had a bad experience out there, the Dayton VA. There's been a lot of changes out there. They've redone. I mean, when I first got out in the mid-90s, they were redoing the hospital, and now to go out there, it's like a regular hospital. It doesn't. It was a little, you know, old when you first walk in. You're kind of looking around. You're like, oh, okay, this is something back from the '60s. You know, still some of the, you know, the colors and everything, but. Hearing test, you know, went through. When I first got out, I didn't have an insurance. Went through as far as used the VA for everything, and again, I never had any issues, never had any problems.
Did you use an organization like DAV, or did you do your own paperwork?
I did my own paperwork when I went out there. The lady who helped me when I first went there, the front desk, the green desk, very helpful. Got my ID. I did not use the DAV. I did not even know that. The one thing, the DAV, I didn't even know the DAV existed. The one thing that I would like to see, and I would like to see for more information to be given to the veterans about what different programs are available for them. We have, through Montgomery County, we have veteran services. I know there's a big stink right now with everything going on with the VA, especially the one out in Phoenix right now. And actually the director that was at the Dayton VA, Glenn, is going out there, I think, trying to help straighten that out. But more information needs to be given to the veterans on what they can actually, what's available for them. Because a lot of people just, I don't think they know.
Mm-hmm. And how to go about getting it.
Exactly. With the internet now, it has made it easier to find these things out. But I don't know. And a lot of the things that I'm hearing negative as far as the veteran services is that people have to wait. But there's such a backlog in DC. But I don't know how we need to fix this, but it definitely is something that I think is important. I know that when my grandfather, my mom's father, he is a World War II veteran, and when he's had to go into a nursing home because of having a stroke and so forth, my mom was ready to pull her hair out, trying to find out what benefits, and it really. And seeing her go through this, I mean, it really kind of is an eye-opener. So I don't know what we can do, you know, as a VFW, what we can do, as veterans, what we can do to help. But there definitely needs to be some type of a streamline where it's easier access. And I know with a lot of the veterans, some of them that are older aren't computer literate, but something for their families that they can be able to access. I think that would be a great help and be very beneficial.
Okay. So we'll go back.
I kind of go off on tangents. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's good. So when you were discharged, they gave you the option
to stay in or to get out. Yes.
So you talked a little bit about why you wanted to get out. What was your command's reaction when you decided to get out?
Well, I was taken off the ship and put in a transient personnel unit at TPU, and that was Naval Station Guam. I talked to some of the other people that were in there, and some of them were being medically discharged. Some of them. I don't know. I'm not trying to judge people, but I kind of thought, you know, well, hearing loss, you need to be able to hear. and I'm not trying to discredit other people if they've hurt their backs or so forth like that, or whatever they're trying to get out. Back then, you know, it was the don't ask, don't tell policy, so, again, to each their own. But I did not want to be stuck in a transient personnel unit with people who just, to be blunt, bitched about the military and how they hated it and how they couldn't wait to get out. It was just a Debbie Downer, and I just thought, you know, I can't do this for two more years. And again, not knowing where I was going to be put, if I was going back to California, Treasure Island, or I actually, when it was time for me to get out, as working in PSD as a PN, I knew that I didn't have to process out in Treasure Island, so I decided to process out in New Orleans and made that paperwork happen. Actually, my DD-214, I actually typed that up, so.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But it's all legit. I had to have a commanding officer sign off on it, so.
But you knew what was available to you.
I knew what was available, and that is being, like I said, in the network of knowing what you is available and you can do. Yes, it's very beneficial. And as a person working in personnel, I had a lot of hall techs that were friends, the welders, and you know, it was awesome when you're going overseas to Korea and you're shopping. You can store all your stuff in their lockers, so you buy a lot of stuff. Yeah, came in handy.
Okay. So, while you were on ship, you kind of talked about it a little bit. What kind of friendships and camaraderie did you form?
I still and because of social media, Facebook, I am still in contact with some of the people I actually went into boot camp with or met at boot camp, which has been great. That's one thing as far as I would have to say being a veteran, there is that bond, and it's not even if you've never met the people before. Like, we've never met before. Well, we have. But we've never met before, but we still have that bond. And when you meet someone who's in the Navy, whatever branch, but if you're in that branch, especially the Navy, you have more things to talk about. So it's kind of an elite club that we're in as veterans. Bonds, friends. I have tons of pictures. That's one thing I could never understand, why people sat in the base bar the entire time that we were in these different ports. I was a tourist. I have photo albums over photo albums of pictures of different things. We were in Singapore, went to the Singapore Zoo, had an orangutan sit on my lap, stuff like that I would never get to do again. Sat in, I did sit in some bars. I'm not going to say I wasn't a saint, but in Kowloon, had our picture taken with one of the British officers there standing at the gates. I mean, it was not all. Yes, you were in the military. Yes, you had a job to do, but your time when you're off on liberty, when you're off the ship, that was your time. You still had rules to follow, but it wasn't strict 24/7.
So I'm curious, as a female on the ship, I've heard of different units where the females stick together in one group, and some units where everybody's just, it doesn't make any difference. What was your ship like?
Our ship was an integrated ship. The USS Holland took over the USS Proteus, relieved them, and the USS Proteus was all male. So there were quite a few Proteus guys that came over to Holland when it came from Charleston. It was a mix. There were some salty dogs on there that still believe that women should not be in the Navy, should not be in the military. We were it was a pretty good group, though, I would say. I never really encountered any hostility from any males, thinking, the comments sometimes, but not, I never felt uncomfortable or ever felt that they were being, hazing or anything like that. Probably when we crossed the equator, I am a shellback, I crossed the equator. The hazing part of that, which they did do that back then.
Could you explain that in detail? Because I think that's good for the history.
Okay. When you cross the equator, before you cross, anybody who's in the Navy, if you're on a ship and you've never crossed the equator, you are considered a polywog, which is the lowest form of life. And once you cross the equator, it's a rite of passage, and then you become a shellback. And there's initiation. Now, because we're an integrated ship, things that I've heard from other people since I've been out that happened, mostly all male ships, not the same. There was no nudity or anything like that. But we had to, you walked around on your hands and knees, and they had fire hoses. They called them shillelaghs that they whipped you with. They collected. This is all in the middle of we're out in the middle of the ocean. This is going on. They collected garbage for days and made a chute, and you had to crawl through the chute and all this stinky garbage. They find the biggest guy on the ship, the biggest belly on the ship, and they put lard on his belly and a cherry in his belly button. I did not have to do this, thank goodness. Because I was the lowest polywog in my division, and we had to do the male and the female, the lowest in the division, we cross-dressed. I went dressed as a guy, and he went dressed as a woman. And we had to get up and represent our division. So, and then there was a big barbecue afterwards on the helo deck. It was, again, a rite of passage. It was something history for the Navy. I have my shellback card. Actually, I think might even have it in my wallet.
You still carry it in your wallet?
I still carry it because if anybody says anything and asks you if you're a shellback, you're supposed to represent that. Yes, you are. You're supposed to prove it. So, are you a shellback?
No, I missed it. Yep.
No. Okay.
So you mentioned the flight deck. Did you guys have steel beach parties?
Yes, we did. We had barbecues on the helo. We had a helo deck, helicopter. But yes, we had steel beach parties up there, cookouts. It really, like I said, the difference between the East Coast and the West Coast in serving, it sounds like it's night and day. Not like I said, not like that we didn't have rules and we didn't follow, but it was a little bit more lax. And it was a little bit more loose as far as the blue shirts and the khakis go. There was a little, we were not, it wasn't, I don't want to say the fraternization was crossing the line, but they were a little bit more relaxed about that as far as, I went and saw the Scorpions at the Budokan, and we had officers there with us, so it's like it wasn't necessarily, there was no fraternization going on, but yet we were all in a group together, so it wasn't, it wasn't as strict, I would say, as probably what the East Coast is.
But they still had officer country on ship.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. We had chiefs. I mean, there was a chief's quarters. Pretty much all the enlisted were below the ship. And then midship was the chiefs, and then officers, and then we got the captains. So.
And you weren't allowed up there unless you were on official duty of some sort?
No, you were not, unless you were mess cranking. You weren't, if you were enlisted as far as going up to the office. Well, unless you were in trouble and you were going in front of the captain, you weren't in officer's quarters. But when I went from fireman to seaman, I had to go in front of the captain of the ship, and they basically, it's like a board hearing, to ask permission. They review what you've done, your qualifications, if this is something, and it has to be approved. So, but yes, I did have to go in front of the captain, but it was a good thing, not a bad thing. So, but no, as far as the ship, no, unless you had authorization, mess cranking, which is the kitchen service you do for everybody does 120 days, you really weren't allowed up there, so off limits.
Now, when you said you were on mess duty, you were on the night shift?
I worked a night shift the whole time.
Will you explain mid-rats?
Mid-rats, this is when all the night workers, this is the other thing with the hookup as far as to store my stuff when we would go overseas to different places, because mid-rats is when the night crew, you've got engineering, the watch, you're serving them dinner. And most of the time it was breakfast food, because they were, or corned beef hash, whatever the cook decided. I think they were MSs. Is that right? Whatever they decided, whatever the cook. I think it was MS. Was it MS? I don't know. MS2, I think we had. He was cool though. I mean, we all smoked back then, but you couldn't smoke down there. You had to go out to the fantail. So as long as we got our work done, he was fine. But we had to prep for in the morning. We'd have to crack eggs. We'd have to peel potatoes. Do the dishes, pans and so forth. But when they came through, we were in port. You weren't really supposed to give people food that they weren't on the ship doing watch or working, but you would still have your occasional people come in that were had been out for the evening, coming in, and they were hungry, and no Taco Bell closed, so but we would hook them up. So yeah.
Okay. How'd you stay in touch with your family and friends back home?
We did not have Facebook back then, so it was correspondence mostly was through letter writing, postcards, letters. Now, we did have a couple telephones on the ship that I can't remember the name of it, but you could call. It wasn't a collect call, but it was a call that you could only make. There was only certain offices that had it. And I can't think what the name of it is. But it was because we were in Guam, we were across the international date line. So we were a day and so many hours ahead of here. So again, I'm giving out my secrets here, because I had a friend who was a first class that had one of these phones in their offices, and I probably got to call home more than others. So, or collect. I mean, we had a payphone on the pier, and you could go down and make phone calls then. But yeah, it was not very many phone calls were made.
Do they call them freedom calls? That's what we called them. But for those phones, no. Okay.
Now, see, when we were in boot camp, we got to call home. We got to call home collect on the payphones there, but they weren't freedom calls. This was you had to. I mean, it was a big long number, and they would patch you in like right pat. It was like basically I was calling right pat.
Oh, the DSN lines.
That's it.
Yeah.
So maybe I wasn't supposed to say anything, but that's how I would call home. Yeah. But yeah, the call would come in through right pat, and then the right pat would patch it in.
Transfer it.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Did they had a time limit for those?
Mm-hmm.
Very strict.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
What was it usually?
You were on there maybe 5 minutes of that,
Oh,
I
okay.
think, yeah. So I just tried not to abuse it too much, but if, you know, something was going on or it had been a while since I'd called home, they'd check in, so, but, no.
Okay. You talked a little bit about sightseeing overseas. Any other good stories from overseas that you can tell?
Sasebo, you've been there. It's all right. I don't want to talk bad about the Japanese. It's industrial. It was more of an industrial place. Korea was dirty. Boy, it's dirty. Trenches still. They had their sewer line. They didn't. It was like trenches, and it was smelly. We went to Busan, and we just to sightsee and so forth. But it was the air. It was so dirty. I mean, you could feel when you're walking down the street when the wind blew, like dirt hitting your face. It just wasn't very clean. Very appreciative of how things are here with the indoor plumbing and so forth. Singapore, spotless. I mean, it was just, that was a really neat place. I was surprised how many different nationalities and different countries were there.
Mm-hmm.
Even though just a couple years of being out of high school on my own, I still didn't know. I wasn't, a world traveler or anything. So a lot of these different countries, I mean, I never even really read about, but it made me more interested about these places. And again, we didn't really have internet at the time back then to look this, or availability to look these things up. So anything I could get my hands on, I mean, maps, different things. Anytime we stayed at a hotel, I was taking, the stuff that we could take that wasn't nailed down.
Mm-hmm.
I did take a robe, and I didn't pay for it, but I still have it too from Hong Kong. But
They billed you for it afterwards, didn't
they probably, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. What I actually didn't pay for the room, so probably whoever paid for it. Probably
Is that the Hilton in Kowloon?
The Hilton in Kowloon. No, it's Hong Kong. It was Hong Kong because it has Hong Kong on the robe. Yeah, but I still have that robe. It's actually hanging up in my bathroom, so I packed that thing around. But
I'm not sure what the statute limitations are for stealing a robe.
I think it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. If I smuggle it on board the ship, I think it's I think we're all right. But pictures, like I said, I have tons of pictures. I just Hard Rock cafes. That was my thing. Every Hard Rock cafe that we went to, I had to get a T-shirt. Which I don't even know where all of them are now. Probably, I think I still have a couple, but these are things too. And thinking then, I had no clue what the future was going to hold or what. But I'm glad that I held on to those pictures and some of those things, the money, the different currency, and so forth, because that's something that my son now, who's 8, can look at those things. So.
Well, the Hong Kong money is collector's items now.
Oh, it is?
Well, they changed it because it's
that's
Chinese
right, because
currency
it's Chinese,
now.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. You or something.
Now hold on to it. If he wants, he can have it when I'm gone, and if he wants to, Huh? I did not know that. That's true, though.
Okay. So you took your medical discharge. What'd you do when you first got out?
Well, wasn't sure what I was going to do. Was I going to go back to school? Was I going to work? There's always a guy involved, though, So, actually, when I came back here, I had no plans of staying. I had met a CB in Guam, and he was stationed in Gulfport, Mississippi. That's why I processed out in New Orleans, so I could be closer to him. Well, that didn't work out, so that old saying, out of sight, out of mind. I went down there, and he'd already moved on. So I was a waitress for a little while, and then got into working for the bank, for Bank One. Now it's Chase. and couple different places after that I worked for. Some of them actually went under. The one that I worked for before the county was a heating and air conditioning. I have construction. I worked for Gold Key Realty, Gold Key Homes, residential. When the housing economy took a tank, everyone lost their job in the division. And then I went to work for a heating and air company, and they sold out to a plumbing company. So I was very fortunate to have an opportunity to get on with Montgomery County, which hopefully the county doesn't close. So,
What exactly do you do for the county?
I just started working for the Community Economic Development. So big project that's out here outside of Union, Procter & Gamble coming in. They had a part in that. That was before I came into the department, but I worked for the director. A lot of learning, the planning commission, things, the Austin Pipe that's going on down there south of here. A lot of the zoning that comes in, building regulations is also, so any permits or anything that's under our department as well. So, but I'm also active with one of the commissioner assistants is ex-Navy, and he has enlisted my help in getting, actually you guys, I want to invite you as well. In September, they're having a peace day, and it's going to be at the Vietnam Memorial there on Patterson Stewart, there at Caroline, by the Caroline Park. Getting the VFW members from all the different districts and honor guard and so forth to come there and be part of this, to celebrate our veterans. So, in joining the VFW, I came in here and you think of, when VFW, you open the door and it's all these older men that are sitting there in the light. They're like, one of those, but it really truthfully isn't. Phyllis is one of the very few female commanders that I knew. I think I'm not sure if she's the only female commander in our district. I think there might be another one. But we're very involved in the community, and that's something that's important to me. And again, somehow if this comes some way, shape, or form that we can get more information out to the veterans, I'm all about helping and moving that forward as well. That was really my ultimate goal with getting in the counties, to work for Veterans Services. So, but I'm still waiting for the job posting to come.
Okay. So let's wrap up with a couple reflections, and you can expand on these as much as you like. So how did your experience in the Navy affect your life overall?
Turned me around, most definitely. Like I said, I was probably would have made poor choices if I didn't have something that kept me in check. And in reflecting on what it taught me as far as respect, not only for others, but also for myself as well. I think that some countries, they have where it's a mandatory 2 years once the kids graduate high school. I don't think that's a bad idea. I really don't. Some type of not necessarily military active, but maybe possibly some sort of like an ROTC. I think that, especially the generation I'm seeing now, wow, yeah. These are who's going to be taking care of us when we're old. That's kind of scary. The travel, like I said, I could never understand why people just sat in the bars over there or these different places we went. There's so much to see, places, never be able to go, possibly ever see again in my lifetime. So I'm very thankful that I got to do that, to travel. That's why I did not choose the Air Force, because I didn't want to sit in Texas the entire time. So, but it was overall, it was good experience. The ear thing, things happen for a reason. If I hadn't gotten out, I wouldn't have gotten married. I wouldn't have my son. but I would have been, if that hadn't happened, I would have been a lifer. I enjoyed the structure. Every day is different. You don't know, there was never not one day was ever the same. There was no rut. And that kept me on my toes as well. So, but yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I highly recommend anyone who's thinking about joining. You get your school paid for. Take advantage of that. It's I think a lot of people with this current war that we're in, it's wrapping up, so forth. It's kind of left a bad taste in people's mouths as far as what the media is doing. But opinions are like everybody has one, nobody likes one. But my time in the military, I enjoyed it, and I wouldn't change any of it at all.
Okay. Is there anything you feel like we haven't gone over, or anything else you want to add? Thank you for this opportunity. I think this is a great project you guys are doing. When you came in and we kind of talked about it after you left, Adrian, Mike and I, that comment you made about your great grandchildren can look us up, and that kind of stuck with me. I thought, you know what, this is history, and even if I played just a small significant part, this is something that it's not all horror and war stories and so forth. Mm-hmm. I'm very thankful for the gentlemen and females who laid that groundwork for the military, but it does need to be documented that it wasn't all bad. Mm-hmm. So thank you, gentlemen. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for the interview.